Welcome in to the Paul Kuharsky podcast, part of the 440 Sports Network, live from Edley's. I've changed location. I'm cheating on my guy in East Nashville, and I have come far away, closer to home. I'm at the Berry Farms location of the delicious barbecue place we all know and love, Edley's, 501 Sarah Avalon Berry Lane. It's a mouthful. It's on the Paytonsville Road exit off of 65. It's a place you should eat. It's one of 8 local locations. Fried ribs, brisket, you name it. Pork, turkey, chicken. Great side dishes, great bartender, great restaurant, wide open spaces here. Never wait in line for more than like one person in front of me when we come here. It's always fantastic. Dropping my script here or my notes. This place is the bomb for barbecue. Check it out. I'll give you a list of the locations in a little bit, but you know where they are, and everybody's got a favorite. Berry Farms here, the factory, also in Franklin, 5 Points in East Nashville, which has been my home base for a long time, where Leon is. Great place. Sylvan Park, Donaldson, Gallatin, 12 South, Nolensville. You know the fried ribs are my favorite. You can't go wrong with that or anything on the menu. Burnt ends, another favorite. Check those out. Lots to talk about today. Also brought to you by Zen Sports, and we will certainly talk about them. This place is a great place to talk about some Titans this afternoon. There's a lot going on. We're going to talk about the ongoing GM search. Another one, second interview completed earlier today with Spytech from Tampa Bay. Vrabel getting settled in New England, getting some personnel power. He oversees Elliott Wolf now. Ryan Cowden on his way in there, certainly going to be under Vrabel as well. Going to talk about Deion Sanders, possibility of him finding his way into the league in Dallas, which could create some opportunities for the Titans. Also, it's interesting to me how everybody in the media, all the pundits on TV, just like talking about Deion Sanders coming into the league with no questions at all about his ability to coach an NFL team and draft games, draft trade games. I've got one Titans draft that I played out this morning. We'll talk about the real potential of this draft, what I did in this draft, and the gadgets that you can play with to make some trades with it. Retweet this. Let people know we're here. Looking forward to a good conversation about all things Titans here. And, of course, I will take a slew of your questions as always. Good to see you, Logan, Jeff, Sam, Howie. Good way to spend a little bit of our Thursday afternoon while I fuel up with some Diet Coke. Cheers to all of you. Let's talk GM connections for starters. You know, I think, and this has been the case with coaching staffs more than anything, right? We get really annoyed. I think it was overkill that we made it out like Mike Vrabel really, really leaned on his buddies on his coaching staff. He wasn't buddies with Todd Downing before he hired Todd Downing to be the Titans tight end coach. And he hired Todd Downing to be the Titans tight end coach with the thought that he could be the offensive coordinator if and when Arthur Smith left. And so that's how things unfolded. Did he become buddies with Todd Downing while he was a tight ends coach? Certainly. But he wasn't big buddies with Todd Downing when he brought him in. Now, did he have friendship with other guys? Yeah, he knew Shane Bowen from Houston. He knew Jim Haslett, who had coached him, who coached inside linebackers for a while. Certainly, most coaching staffs are loaded with guys that the head coach knew and trusted from before. And there's going to be an element of that, there's an element to that in the initial 10 that Chad Brinker interviewed for the Titans open general manager slot. There's an element of that in the 6 who advanced to second round interview. And there could well be an element of that in who ends up the general manager. And we tend to get pissed off about that. Well, you're only hiring your friends. You're only hiring people we know. I know a lot of you are in business. A lot of guys in my All-22 are in business. I think that's the way the business world works, right? My brother was a longtime marketing executive, and now he's a marketing professor. He talks to his kids, students, about applying for jobs, and they're frustrated that when a job's posted on one of these job sites, they've applied for hundreds and to no avail. And he's telling them most of those jobs are posted out of formality, right? Those jobs get posted because you have to post them. But if a big boss is looking for an entry-level person, odds are they already have somebody in mind. It's somebody that they've met, or somebody that somebody's recommended to them, or something like that. It's all about who you know, right? That saying exists for a reason. And so if I'm Chad Brinker, I understand this a bit. I understand that we're all annoyed, sometimes to a reasonable degree, sometimes to an overriding degree, about people always hiring their buddies, right? Quote unquote, their buddies. But I think it's also really hard to talk to somebody on Zoom for 3 hours and then to invite them to Nashville and talk to them with your boss, Amy Adams Strunk, and with your coach, Brian Callahan, for 4 or 5 hours. And out of that, maybe there'll be a third round of interviews. We don't know. But out of that, with references and all of that, certainly you're going to talk to some people who know him that you know to some degree. But out of that, you're taking a big leap of faith that this guy is going to help you move forward, as opposed to somebody that you know. In this case, he worked with John Eric Sullivan for 13 years, I believe, in Green Bay. I can understand why his personal experience with John Eric Sullivan has impact, has weight, right? Now, some of these others are more connections, but still, if you have a friend that you really trust, and the friend that you really trust says you can't go wrong with that guy, and that guy also impresses you in the 3-hour Zoom and in the 4 or 5 hour that you spend with him when he comes to your office, you're going to have more, you're going to feel reassured, right? And so Dodds worked in Seattle front office from 2010 to 2016 under John Schneider, who's one of the best GMs in the league. Well, Snyder only overlapped with Brinker for 1 year in Green Bay, and Brinker was only a scouting intern there, but they're cut from the same cloth, right? They're both founded in the Packers' philosophies, and Brinker knows tons of guys from Green Bay who know Snyder. So if they and Schneider are giving him a great recommendation about Dodds, that's going to carry a lot of weight, you would think. I think it's understandable that would carry a lot of weight. Then you look at Ian Cunningham, and Ian Cunningham is a very intriguing candidate to me. People say, well, Ian Cunningham's with the Bears now. Well, the Bears haven't been all bad. Bears made a trade that fleeced Carolina, right, when they were dealing away the pick that turned into Bryce Young. Some people say Cunningham was responsible for that trade. So, the guy at the top gets credit for the trade, but he may have been involved to some degree, and that's great. Cunningham crossed paths with Dorsey, John Dorsey. John Dorsey was with Green Bay, went away. He returned for a year in 2012 as director of football operations. When Dorsey returned that year, Brinker was a scout in Green Bay. For the time that he was in Green Bay, he had worked his way up the ladder. He was a scout. So he and Dorsey were part of the same team, the Packers front office, for a year. Surely they know each other, and I would think value each other. And they're cut from the same cloth. They grew up in the Packers system. So if Dorsey gives a endorsement of Cunningham, that's going to carry some weight. There's one more smaller connection here. Spytek, who's in Tampa Bay now, was a scout in Denver when Callahan started out there. So that can't hurt him either. But I can understand why Sullivan in particular, Dodds, who's been in Indianapolis in the same post for like 7 years, which is a little concerning, but worked in Seattle under Snyder. Cunningham, who's been in Philadelphia and Baltimore, two great front offices, is now in Chicago, who crossed paths with Dorsey. I can understand why those guys might have a leg up. And if he hires one of them, we're going to say, oh, he's hiring somebody he knows. But if your neck's on the line, wouldn't you be more comfortable hiring somebody you know, who you absolutely have a better trust feel in, especially if the other guys don't blow your socks off in a way that the guys you know aren't necessarily doing? I'm curious how you guys feel about that. I'll dive into some of your questions, and we'll go some other places here. Sam says, it ain't necessarily what you know, but who you know. Networking, etc. makes sense. Well, I want the guy that knows the what, but if knowing the what is combined with knowing the who, that's significant. Yeah. Yeah, and this is important too. Ed Henry, don't know how Brinker steps away from a scouting grade system he knows or had used. And that's a good question. If it is somebody that comes from a different system, is that person going to implement his system, or is he going to implement Brinker's system? That's a very good question right there. Sam asks, how does this GM search differ from the J-Rob and Rand searches from a timing process? I think it's similar to the Rand process. I mean, they got to it pretty quickly. J-Rob was already out of work, so, but I mean, they fired Rand Tuesday after the season was over. Cowden and Ossenfort were getting an early look there. The list of candidates was smaller. The only guy that you'd remember from that list is, which I published earlier this week, the very not memorable list, that the only guy you'd remember is Ian Cunningham. And that's another advantage to Cunningham in that Burke Nihill and Amy Adams-Strunk had met and interviewed him before. Now, it sounds like Burke Nihill's not involved in these interviews. Not that his fingerprints wouldn't be on this, because Brinker is Nihill's guy. So Brinker is Nihill's guy, even if Nihill's not in the room for these interviews. I'm sure he's meeting these candidates, at least briefly. And, Brinker ultimately getting approval from Amy, who's involved in the interviews, is, also tacitly at least getting Nihill's approval. I don't know. TK asks, is this maybe the most competent list for a hire that the organization has run? I don't have an issue with anybody in their final six for once. Yeah, I mean, I went back and looked at that last list. Boyd from Buffalo, Cook from Cleveland. They were not as strong a candidates as some of these guys. Why doesn't Brinker, John Shaft asks, take the job reins, hire Sullivan, and place him on the staff? May as well has the final decision unless he doesn't want to come here. Either that or get Dimitrov. Dimitrov's already out of it. So that part's irrelevant. I've asked this question, and I'll keep asking it until I get a good answer. Let's put it this way. Chad Brinker says that the GM is the most important job in the front office and one of the two most important jobs on the team, along with the coach. And the league, according to the reporting of CBS Sports, has signed off on the GM being the biggest job on the football side of the front office, in that teams were not allowed to say no when the Titans requested permission. That's despite the fact that the job does not have final authority on football matters. So between what Brinker's saying and between what the league is confirming, this is a big job, though we know that Brinker has final say, final authority over football matters. I asked Brinker that when I spoke to him. If this is one of the two best jobs in the organization and the best job on your side of the business in your department, why don't you want it? And he didn't really answer that question. Now, I will ask him that question repeatedly. But my sense of it, and some things that I've heard about Chad, who it isn't backed by everyone that's worked with him since he's been with the Titans, is that he may be a guy who wants power, but not necessarily accountability. Though I don't know how he avoids accountability here, given that he's mentioned multiple times, and Nihil too, that he's got final authority on all football matters. And so whether they're going to say, well, that was the GM's choice, we're going to say it doesn't matter. You had final say over football matters. So I don't think that's going to get him off the hook for anything. And I don't know why, for a guy who's a scout and talks about the scouting in his blood, this administrative position is more appealing than the one that he says is a better job. So I'm confused a little bit by that, for sure. What else we got here? Excuse me. Any chance the new GM cuts ties with Callahan? I don't think it's in the realm of possibility. I mean, he'd have to come in, study up first. Coaching staff is under his purview, but he's under Brinker's purview, and Amy Adams Strunk in her statement said Callahan remains his coach. DJ from Nashville, complimentary about the podcast. I appreciate it. Retweet. If you're watching on YouTube, give it a thumbs up, give it a subscription, all that stuff. If you're listening later on Apple, on iHeart, on Spotify, rate, subscribe, review, all of that stuff helps. The more you help, the more I appreciate it. Eat at Edley's, bet at Zen Sports. All of these things help. Quick refresher question from Nathan. Did Carthon bring in Brinker? Carthon did. He brought in two assistant general managers, Chad Brinker and Anthony Robinson. Brinker surpassed him, and Anthony Robinson was fired by Brinker last Tuesday, the same day that Rand Carthon was fired, the same day that the director of security was fired, the same day the director of operations was fired, the same day the director of football technology / the film guy was fired. Coaching staff updates and decisions aren't going to come until after the general manager is hired. I don't think that's as much to let the general manager chime in as it is to get the GM hired done and to focus their energies on that and get that guy hired before they turn their focus to the coaching staff. I would be very surprised if there's not at least one and probably two or more changes on the coaching staff. What is the latest? Now we'll turn to some of these. Let's see. So Chad basically wants to take, this is Sam again, Chad basically wants to take all the busy work off the GM's plate so he can focus on ball and film, but Chad has power to overrule the guy he's freeing up to make these decisions. LOL. That's basically true. And when he described the general manager's job, he said, it's a good job for somebody that just wants to be all ball and doesn't want to worry about the analytics and doesn't want to worry about the operations and doesn't want to worry about, all these other departments. And I think maybe people don't realize how many of those departments there are. I don't have any objection to Chad Brinker saying it's too big an operation to just have a GM doing everything anymore. I think that's fine. I think it's the titling and the distribution of power that is making the Titans odd right now. Chris, I don't know about the timeline. I think they will finish with these 6 finalists by the end of tomorrow. Now, do they hire out of that or do they want 2 of them back? I don't know. But I think early next week, so by early next week, somebody's going to be in place. So if Brinker had a lot of power last week, Robert asks, how is next year going to be any different? Well, we don't know. We don't know how much Brinker used his power last year. And technically, according to what the Titans spelled out, Rand Carthon had a final say on personnel. Now, was Brinker actually pulling the strings there? I don't know. I haven't talked to anybody that's given me any examples of Brinker putting his foot down and overruling the guy who we were told had final say. So, look, I'm hearing more and more that Vrabel was the real power behind the 2023 personnel acquisitions. But I'm not hearing anything that suggests that Carthon wasn't in 2024. Now, I know there's some reports out there that are saying there were some moves. Well, I want to hear what. I mean, tell me. Don't half report it. Full report it. Yeah, and Bart raises an interesting point here, and I think a good one. If losing / being a laughingstock isn't enough accountability, ... Derek says, my power, he's talking about me, not him. My power and influence on the Titans is fantastic. Over the years, he's kept this organization accountable, keeping the Titans from being a lame duck franchise. It could be worse without him. I appreciate that you think I have that impact. I do think they read and listen. And I do think more could be done collectively to hold them account journalistically. But I try to do my part. I'm working on a story that I think will shed some more light on some more stuff, not on the football end of things. Callahan sitting in these meetings has to be a little weird for him, wouldn't you think, since he's technically sitting in the meeting of the guy that's probably going to fire him this year. I'm sure he's not thinking of it that way. He's thinking this guy's going to help save me. This guy is going to help me get the players I need to become the coach I know I can be. I'm sure he's thinking of that. These guys are proud guys who, expect good things to come. And Callahan certainly got the backing of his bosses to go do that, hopefully to become that. And so I would expect things to, in his head, be going that direction. So I don't think he's thinking that way. That's a little bit of an audio mistake there. I apologize. Since Brinker and Callahan are friends, don't you think these other interviews, they're just going to get the formalities to say they're interviewing others, but in the end he gets the job? Well, John, that's John Stamos. No, I don't think you interview 9 other people as a formality. First off, when you interview 9 other people, you reserve the right to be surprised, right? You could go into it thinking, well, John Eric is the guy I'm intending to hire here, but somebody else could blow you away. 2, you interview a wide array of candidates to get a wide array of information. So if they hire the guy who's a favorite, and by the way, the only report we heard about a favorite outside of connecting the dots ourselves was that McKenzie was the favorite. Diana Rossini reported that. McKenzie didn't make the final 6. But you should interview a wide breadth of people. They've gotten 10 opinions on Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. They've gotten 10 opinions on their roster. They've gotten 10 opinions on Callahan in those first interviews that were just Brinker. They've gotten 10 opinions, 10 valuable opinions on a lot of things about themselves that are widely valuable. But also, it's a terrible thing to merely go through formalities. And the Patriots, I think, fairly got bashed. They brought in, and there's a Rooney Rule element to it, but they brought in Byron Leftwich and Pep Hamilton. Now, Byron Leftwich and Pep Hamilton aren't surfacing as head coaches in the league for anybody this year or anytime soon or probably ever. I think Pep Hamilton has run its course. Byron Leftwich was a fall guy in Tampa Bay. He wants back in. There was a good story about him in The Athletic. And I think he may resurface, and maybe he works his way up from a quarterback coach to a coordinator to being in a head coaching realm at some point, but it's not now. So those are sham interviews by the Patriots that some people carried water for the Patriots and just said, well, they fulfilled the Rooney Rule with these 2 interviews and didn't mention that the 2 people they interviewed were absolutely not legitimate candidates for head coaching position. And some legitimate head coaching candidates turned down that interview. Defensive coordinator in Detroit, whose name is slipping my mind, Aaron Glenn, I think passed on it, knowing that they were heading towards Vrabel and didn't want to waste his time. But that's a lot different than what the Titans are doing. All of these people are qualified to be a GM in the league based on what they've done until now. So I don't think the Titans are wasting their time. If Vrabel was power behind 2023, where did the rift come from? Well, the rift came from not getting – them hiring a guy he didn't think was qualified for the job and who he was proven right on, right? So, whether Vrabel was in fact, as I'm coming to believe, really leading the charge in 2023, I think it's hard to say, well, then everything should have been fine with Rand and he shouldn't have cared. I think he's frustrated that they hired a guy that he didn't think was qualified, and a year later they didn't think was qualified. So it's frustration with management more than anything. Look at this guy coming in here. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a guy I've been in some bad situations with. I was with him when he met his wife. Done some horrible things together. He is a big Bills fan, and he wants me to say I think the Bills are going to win. And I, in fact, think the Bills are going to win. I'll go here. This guy's going to take me right into an advertising situation. He's got a lot of time on his hands. Zen Sports is a proud sponsor of the Paul Kuharsky podcast. No danger, first wager bonus. He's up in New Jersey, so he's not able to take advantage of this offer because you have to be in Tennessee. Sign up for Zen Sports. Use the code TNPaul. If you lose your first bet, you get refunded up to $1,000. TNPaul is the code. Join Zen Sports. Use TNPaul. Bet at least $10 on anything up to plus 500. Bet $10, bet $1,000. Win, you're in the money. Lose, you get your money back within 24 hours. It's a pretty sweet deal. Now, we have a habit of giving you picks here. And for Derek, I'm going to give you my pick. I'm not going to be a wimp like JT, my fine producer here, who's taken games with big spreads, which, by the way, 3 of the games. I'm taking on the big game here. I cannot wait to watch Ravens-Bills, and Derek is going to be very pleased because I think Josh Allen, who's had some huge moments, is in his biggest moment. Everybody knows that. Baltimore's weakness is pass defense. They're 30th in the league. Buffalo's 9th. Allen catches fire at home. The passing game of the Bills keys this. Derrick Henry can run. Lamar can do his thing. Lamar's going to win MVP. Josh Allen's going to win this game. The Bills are going to Kansas City unless we see an upset there, in which case they're hosting the Texans. I like the Bills, who are getting 1.5 at home. JT, he's been crazy. JT's taking easy games. He's taking Houston plus 8.5 at Kansas City. He thinks it'll be a close game because he likes, I presume, Houston's defense. And he's taking the Rams getting 6 at Philly. JT, do you want to jump on and defend yourself with these 2 picks where you just love points?
I mean, listen, I would have taken the Bills had I not found out that, sorry for Derek to say, but in Lamar Jackson's career, when he opens as a underdog and then finishes as a favorite, he's 6-0 straight up and against the spread.
Have you seen the guy in the playoffs over his career?
Yes, but I do think that there's something to be said about that.
Too much numbers talk, not enough eyes.
They also do have Derrick Henry, so
yeah.
Against
Houston, you think is keeping this close. You don't think they're winning, do you?
No, I think they keep it close. I mean, I would like to see a different matchup in the AFC Championship besides Ravens/Bills versus Chiefs, but ultimately I think they keep it close. But once again, Kansas City loves to win one-score games. So,
Yeah. Houston's defense was terrific
yes.
in that first game. I don't know if they sustain it. I'd love for them to sustain it. But, who wouldn't like this is TV. I'm sure it's CBS that has that AFC Championship game. And to not get Kansas City against the Bills or the Ravens, to wind up with Houston at the Bills or the Ravens would be a massive television disappointment, as I think would LA being in the NFC Championship game. I just can't get turned on by the Rams at all.
It's more so I don't believe in the Eagles in what I saw last week against the Packers. I mean, that was a very slog of a game last week, and I think that the Rams are riding high right now with that prolific offense.
I thank you, as always, for your picks. I think people collectively betting with us would have won. They should stick with us all the way. But I think you've been better than I have. So congratulations. You got that to hang your hat on. Bet Zen Sports. Use code TNPaul to sign up. Gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. You must be 21 and over and in Tennessee to bet. Let's hit a few other things here, and then I'll get back into your questions if that works for you and you don't really have a say-so. Remember, I am at EDLEY'S BBQ, which you should eat. Mike Vrabel, we touched on it. Mike Vrabel's set up. Mike Vrabel won, right? Mike Vrabel won. He got fired because he couldn't get along with Rand Carthon and didn't collaborate, yada, yada. Now, a year later, the guy that he couldn't, quote-unquote, collaborate with got fired. So he was right. Now he's the hottest candidate on the coaching market. He gets the best job that's available with the best ownership, with the best quarterback, and he gets personnel power, which I'm a little scared of him having. But he's Elliott Wolf's boss, and he's going to be Ryan Cowan's boss. I think there's an element of the Titans high-ups, you know who they are, that would like to prove they're smarter than Mike Vrabel. And as I wrote in my piece about this yesterday, I said, surely they'd like to appear smarter than he, a game I'm not sure they could play well or win. A lot of people don't want to talk about him. I get that. I wouldn't want to talk about a former coach who pretty much kicked my team's ass either. And I expect when New England comes with Drake May to Tennessee in the 2025 season, a game I hope isn't the opener, but I hope it's somewhere like week 3 to week 6. I would expect Vrabel will do everything possible to kick ass. I need to mention that in all of this stuff where I think there are feelings about Vrabel, Brian Callahan has none of them. Didn't work for the Titans at the same time. Doesn't know him outside of passing, even if that. That's it. But think about Vrabel right now. And he's not thinking about Tennessee either. Told them Rand wasn't the guy. Struggled through a year with him. Fired in part for non-collaboration. Year later, the Titans fire the guy they backed. Vrabel's the hottest commodity on the market. Goes to his team with solid ownership. Has a quarterback in Drake May. Boom. There's no way people aren't going to measure this team against that team. And I think fairly so. And if you're a Titans fan, on the one hand, you want to forget about them. But on the other hand, you got to look at New England and think that could be us, minus the Drake May part. And if Amy could be, more patient, less temperamental. She's not going to be Robert Kraft. She doesn't have Robert Kraft's resume. She doesn't have Robert Kraft's money. But there's a guy we fired. He got the power he wanted. Let's see what he can do. Go read that story at paulkuharsky.com, where you should become a member. It's $7.50 a month. The price of a nice cocktail at a place like EDLEY'S here, or a nice cup of coffee. I'm not a coffee drinker, but people spend a lot of money on coffee. If you want to be a true insider on the Tennessee Titans, and I know most of you do, a lot of people in this room will vouch for the value of paulkuharsky.com. Come join. Don't miss out on what's there. Mike Herndon, fantastic. Blake Bedingfield will be back with with some stuff in advance of the draft. And I'm going to keep thinking about and examining and asking these tough questions. And I'll be right there at the press conference when we meet the new GM and writing about him. East-West Shrine game is coming up, the first All-Star game. Schefter reported Titans staff would be on the game. I reported last night. As of last night, it amounted to Titans assistant wide receiver coach Peyton McCollum serving as a quarterback coach on the Shrine Bowl. Zach Lyons said just before I started, the coaching rosters are out. That's it for the Titans. So Peyton McCollum is the assistant wide receivers coach, is a quarterback coach in the game. Whether Shedeur Sanders is on the East or West team and whether McCollum winds up with him, we don't know yet. I do know that at some of these games, oftentimes the coaching staffs flip on like the Friday before the game so that everybody gets to work with everybody. So I would think Peyton would come back with some intel on Sanders that the Titans otherwise wouldn't have. So that's great. And I think the Titans have staff members in contention to coach the Senior Bowl as well. So maybe they'll get another crack. Maybe they'll get another crack at it as well. Rand Carthon's radio interview, how did you like that? Did everybody update their playlists? Did everybody update their reading lists? Does everybody in here understand the difference between the message and the messenger? I would have loved to have spoken to the three people involved in that and talked about people watching things unfold there, being upset about things there, feeling the guidance and the tone wasn't being set, and then me reporting about those things. Now, it's a different time now, so there aren't many reporters who just report and don't also comment. That complicates things for people who can't think that through. And I certainly have comments on those things. But that section was reported. Rand Carthon seems to think, I think that he did those things. I reported that he did those things. I hope everybody in this room can understand that. That's all I have to say about it. We'll see if you have anything more into questions, and I'll dive back in here. Do we actually believe this new hire will have the power to fire Callahan? Doesn't that go against this whole collaboration philosophy? We have not heard the word collaboration since the season ended. Brinker hasn't mentioned it. Nihil hasn't mentioned it. They are off the collaboration train, for one thing. For another thing, here's how it works. The GM will technically have authority to fire the head coach, but his boss will technically have authority to say, no, we're not going to fire the head coach. So the GM might as well not formulate an opinion that, hey, we need to fire this head coach without figuring out what his boss thinks about the head coach, because if Brinker is into Callahan, then there's no use formulating that opinion. And I'm sure that's part of the interview process here. So I don't think anybody's coming in the door who's anti Callahan. Wouldn't make much sense for what they're doing and how they appear to be moving forward. I feel pretty comfortable saying that. Brian Callahan, I think, is in fine shape right now. I think unquestionably in fine shape right now. And I think it'd be hard for him to get fired, even with a bad season, in season next year. Marty says, if they got the NFL to sign off on the job being an upgrade to an assistant GM's role, what does that mean? Could they be saying GM runs the day-to-day and Brinker replaces the day-to-day of the owner? Well, no. I mean, the owner's never been doing the day-to-day personnel or running the football side of the team. It's been the role in this team's history of the general manager up until last year when they created a new position, president of football operations, which never previously existed. And now, to hear Brinker tell it helps divide a too heavy workload, which I don't think is an unreasonable thing. It's just that division of final authority and this idea that there's a triangle of three rather than a line of two that complicates things, and it allows for, collaboration of three will be good at the beginning, and then when things go bad, who's responsible for what? Well, they put it on the record that Brinker's responsible for all of it. So that's that. Andrew, I just talked about that interview. So if you have any further questions, we can discuss. Barton. How you doing, Barton? You say you struggle with interviewing potentials from failing franchises. I wrote about that this week. Cunningham's with the Bears. You could call the Bears a failing franchise. He's only been there, I think, 4 years. And prior to that, he worked for Baltimore. And prior to that, he worked for Philadelphia. And you could argue that Baltimore and Philadelphia are the two best run franchises in the NFL. You could argue they've got the two best front offices in the NFL. He worked for Ozzie Newsome, who you could argue is the best general manager of all time in the NFL or in the modern NFL. So you can't scratch Ian Cunningham off because the Bears are a bad team right now. And Dodds, he's been in Indianapolis for 7 years. Indianapolis hasn't been good, though it has done some good things personnel-wise. But are we going to say that Dodds is the root of the problem in Indianapolis? And before he was with Indianapolis, he was in Seattle. And Seattle is a pretty good front office. So. Deagle, again, the coaching staff changes, just been back-burnered while they focus all their energy and attention on the GM thing. Howie says, hearing the Titans want to be like Detroit and Green Bay. Am I as confused as you are about the identity of the Titans, especially since they keep firing personnel? Well, they've got no real identity. But Amy Adams Strunk has made it clear she really likes what Detroit has done, and she's good friends with Detroit's owner. And so, Detroit's a good model to follow in terms of digging out of failure. And Green Bay is obviously a good model for sustained success. When I take a little pause here, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify or iHeart, I'm scrolling through some fan questions here. So it's a little bit of a non-traditional podcast, but I hope you bear with it in the name of me arriving at good questions that produce good content. So there we go. Allen doesn't win much in the playoffs either, Sam is saying. I just feel like it's Bill's year. And I think after being written off. So, look, I think it's going to be a fantastic game. I won't be surprised if the Ravens win it. Ravens are clearly super, super good. I think a lot of people in this room will be Baltimore biased because of Henry, and I understand that. Richard says, seems like Levis did better in the Vrabel offense than Callahan offense. I mean, he certainly made fewer mistakes. Which split? This is a great question, Sam. I ought to do a story on this down the road. Which split will Titans fans torture themselves over for longer, Vrabel or AJ? I think, we'll have to see what Vrabel does, but I think the AJ one is used by a lot of people, and understandably so, as a marker. And for a lot of people, the AJ trade was the beginning of the end for that period in franchise history. I think the marker was the drafting of Isaiah Wilson. But I certainly think, we could use it. Do I have a guy in the draft I'd pound the table for? Barton asks. I mean, I tend to think that that Hunter is the best player in the draft. And whether the Titans are good at cornerback or not, you can't avoid him if he's there, unless you're dealing out, which might be understandable. I think they need picks above all else. I'm also big on Abdul Carter. I'm with the masses, I think, a lot on those two guys. Now you'd like your guy at the top of the draft to, have all the height, weight, speed stuff, and Carter isn't maybe as big as you'd like, but he sure as hell is productive. Well, I didn't say the Pats win next year, Eddie. I think the Pats will be on a good path in relatively short order. They need a lot of picks, the same way the Titans need a lot of picks. But I think they had a bad coach and a bad situation last year. I think Brian Callahan was far steadier with his messaging and management than Gerard Mayo was. And I think they've got a quarterback, and the Titans don't. So the questions that Mike Vrabel has to answer up there don't start with who's your quarterback. And when those questions start with who's your quarterback, things are a lot tougher. Yeah, and Sam's been picking up on the Vrabel thing. I mean, I said in what I wrote, I think he will have come to terms with a lot of his shorter comings in the year away. I'll be surprised and disappointed if he doesn't. I expect he'll hire better. I expect he'll manage the ego better. I expect he'll take more personnel advice on some of the people that maybe he realizes that he tabbed, that were more his guys that didn't necessarily pan out. I think I know he doesn't really care about the media, but I think he realizes that when things went south, him being sour publicly didn't benefit him or the team, and he'll take that more into account. And I think if he makes adjustments in some of those areas, even minor ones, it'll help him be better second time around. Ed Henry said, doesn't getting a quarterback and some wins cure everything? Yes, it does. All right, let's go a little bit into what I've got left here. I play with this Pro Football Network draft simulator, just like virtually everybody does. I mean, my All-22, somebody's taking a picture of their result on a regular basis and throwing it in there. It's great for conversation. The thing is that I think it's very trade generous, and I think it's very trade generous because it wants to draw people to it. It's more fun to play with if you can make trades there more often than less often. And I should spend some time maybe measuring the trades it allows against the trade value calculators. That becomes a little harder to do when you're getting somebody's first from next year or next year's picks. Maybe that's a project. I'll sign somebody in the All-22. Sam, you're here. Why don't you get on that? I just want to talk you through one that I did. I thought maybe this would be fun once in a while. I always create a lot of conversation. There goes the skin. Oh, here we go. You don't need to put it up yet. Hold on. Don't get ahead of me, JT. I'll call for it when I want. Thank you. So here's an offer made to me. I based this off offers made to me. So I didn't instigate these offers. I played with Dallas for a while because of the potential that Dion goes there and all of that. I played with trading down to 12 and then back up to Carolina. I ended up with Ted McMillan. Which isn't the home run necessarily that you want, but trading down from 1 to 12 and back up to 8, I didn't yield that much except Dallas is number 1 next year. But other than that, I was still pretty thin in the draft. Let me talk you through what I wound up with here. The Giants offered me number 3 for number 1. They offered me number 3, number 34 in the second round. That's high in the second round. Number 65 at the top of the third round. Number 103 in the fourth round. And a 2026 second round pick. That's a bounty, right? I countered because I wanted a first round pick next year. So 34 in the second which is what they offered me. I gave up on 65 in the third, went right to the fourth round pick, and I wanted the 2026 first. So I dropped the 2025 third, the fourth, excuse me, to go from the 2026 second rounder to the 2026 first rounder, and they accepted. All right, so there I'm set. I've got a pretty decent bounty, and I'm dropping from first to third. Here's what happened from there. JT, now is the time for the graphic. If you're watching, you can see it. I'll talk you through it. I took Abdul Carter, the Penn State edge rusher, third overall. I took 34th, the offensive tackle from Minnesota, Ariante Ursary, 34th. Then I got an offer from Green Bay at number 35. So I was drafting 34th and 35th, and I got an offer from Green Bay that I thought was too good to pass up. 435, they gave me 54 in the second round. So a 19-spot drop, 87 in the third round, and a 2026 second-round pick. So here I'm accumulating picks again. I accepted this offer. I waited till 54th, and I took Isaiah Bond, the receiver from Texas, coming off an injury. And I took Rod Moore, the Michigan safety. Needs to put on some weight, but I think he's got some good qualities. I'm not deep into these guys, but I thought this was a pretty good four-pack. I still have, outside of what you see on the screen and what I'm telling you, Carter, Ursary, Bond, and Moore, I still had the 104th pick. I only went 3 rounds deep in the draft, so that's a fourth rounder. Still had the 104th pick in the draft, plus the Giants' first rounder in 2026 and the Packers' second rounder in 2026. So I'm doubling up on first rounders and second rounders next year. I felt pretty good about that. Do I think these trades are realistic? I don't. I think I'm too happy about the returns that I got there to think it's realistic. Do you guys think that's realistic? I don't think it's realistic. Josh F. says he'd be stunned if Bond was there at 54. I was choosing between him and the Stanford kid. But, I mean, it's always a fun exercise. I may bring one of these every week just to it helps familiarize me with some of these guys, helps me get some feedback with you about what you think. Aunt D's likes this trade scenario. He wants the ammo for 26. I don't think having 2 firsts and 2 seconds next year in a better draft would be spectacular. Another Biscuit says, hopes the Giants are desperate enough to keep their jobs to trade down to the number 3 pick, trade up from the number 3 pick. And this clearly, that's what the Titans need. They need people to love Sanders and Ward, and they need to not feel that wild about them. The trades in those are wild, says Logan Grady. You can end up with 10 future firsts without any counters. I don't know. I've been turned down some. I do think it's very loose, but I have been turned down. So it's not without a governor. But there are other ones, and maybe it's PFFs later, where you can kind of turn. I think you can turn the trade meter, to be easy, medium, difficult, which it is. Dwayne loves these trades. I think he spends hours at a time doing them, and he wants me to keep bringing them in here. Did you like that one? Sunmaker says, I like Carter. I feel like nobody on our team could chase down a quarterback. That is absolutely true. Titans have a lot of trouble. Quick word about Jeffrey Simmons as we head down the stretch here. Jeffrey Simmons earlier this week liked the tweet. Vrabel finalized his deal with New England, and somebody said ought to take Jeffrey Simmons with him or trade for Jeffrey Simmons or whatever. And he tweeted, he liked the tweet. Now, I think Jeffrey Simmons is pretty apt, pretty good at using Twitter. I mean, he blocked me, so he knows how it works. Blocked me, which is weird because he blocked me now in the new Twitter. You block somebody, says they blocked you, and then you could see everything they tweeted. But it's just crazy to me how he misses the mark so consistently. So he likes to tweet, which I think he thinks he can do in secret. Nobody will see it. Then it gets a lot of attention that he liked to tweet. And then he tweets. Liking that tweet was literally not on purpose. Y'all cool out. It's not that deep. I know where my heart at. My goal is to retire a Titan. Back to enjoying my offseason. I will just say this about Jeffrey Simmons. I would take that at face value for most guys. Cool out. It's not that deep. I didn't mean it. And maybe he didn't. And it doesn't matter. He's not controlling where he goes or where he doesn't go. God stinks says we all know he did it on purpose. But he didn't mean it when he went after Buck Rising in front of a bunch of kids when Buck was broadcasting at Titans practice during training camp. He didn't mean it. Doesn't seem when he spit on Marshall Yanda and wouldn't talk about it. He didn't mean it, I don't think, when he fought with the Bills in the tunnel in Orchard Park, because he wouldn't talk about that either, wouldn't address it. The team leader so often doesn't mean what he says or does. That's not me, is what he said after the incident with Buck at training camp. And an insider told me that's what he says after every bad move. That's not me. It's funny because his Twitter bio reads, I know who I am. We're a long ways into Jeff Simmons' career. He should be a mature guy. If you do this and then you say, that's not me, and you do this and you say, that's not me, and you keep doing it, where you're spitting on Marshall Yanda and you're instigating fights with the Bills, guys who are completely believable, who have no reason to make shit up, accusing you of this stuff, and you go after Buck Rising right in front of a whole bunch of people who could witness it, and you like a tweet when it's clear you know how to use Twitter. Is that not you? Or is that you? Seems like it's you. That's not me. That's me seeing things and commenting fairly on them. Jarrell Casey was the guy in Jeffrey Simmons' place before Jeffrey Simmons. And there was no list like this for Jarrell Casey. Just the same production, pretty much. But from a kind of underdog guy who didn't have Jeffrey Simmons' physical gifts. I want to talk to you about the Hall of Fame. I don't know if you know or not when the meeting is or was. There have been some reports. I'm not supposed to say when it is or was, so I won't say when it is or was. I just want to set this up for you because a lot of fans are big on first ballot guys, and they think guys should get voted in as soon as they're on the list if they're one of the best players on the list of 15 modern candidates. So I pose this to you. Eric Allen, phenomenal defensive back, mostly for the Philadelphia Eagles. 54 picks in his career. Terrific player. It's his 19th year of eligibility this year. It means he's got one more year of eligibility next year. Now, in the field this year, Luke Kuechly could make a case for first ballot. Adam Vinatieri can make the case for first ballot. Eli Manning could make a case for first ballot. I'm not going to buy it. Terrell Suggs going to get consideration first time he's through. Marshall Yanda, who I just mentioned. Friggin' unbelievable guard. Unbelievable guard. First ballot push. Well, these are among the 5 best guys. You got to vote for them first time. Just pick the best 5 out of the 15. Well, if you push and vote for those, if you think those 5 guys or 3 of those 5 guys or 2 of those 5 guys, whatever, are among the best 5 guys, and you apply that logic to your ballot, then guys like Eric Allen, who's got 2 years left of eligibility, and Darren Woodson, who's kind of in some ways the father of this positionless football that we see now, a guy who had some cornerback skills, played safety, had linebacker skills, and was all over the place for championship Dallas Cowboy teams. who's in his 17th year, their clocks are going to tick out, right? Because then next year, these guys are going to be back, the ones who don't make it. And then next year you add Drew Brees and Larry Fitzgerald and Jason Witten and Frank Gore. And a couple of those guys are getting in on the first ballot. So I'm asking you, what do you do with Eric Allen and Darren Woodson? And if Eric Allen and Darren Woodson, or one or the other, get in, and people bemoan it and say, well, Luke Kuechly didn't get in on first ballot and he should have, or Yonda or Vinatieri or whoever, that will be the why. We'll get to Frank Gore another time, Logan. I'm just giving you examples of guys that are going to be on the ballot. So if a guy like Eric Allen or Darren Woodson is to get in, and they are great players who deserve every consideration to get in, I'd say I'm not as big on Woodson, though I think he's got a very good case. I think Eric Allen is definitely a Hall of Famer. Dwayne can't believe he's not in. If we're doing the things we need to do to get Eric Allen into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, then we're going to hear bitching about one of these other guys not getting in first year. Well, somebody's got to not get in order for Eric Allen to get in before his clock ticks out. That's how the process works. And so you might think about that when the list comes out. Now, let me tell you a little bit about how the process works this year, because it's changed. And we can end on this, or I'll take some Hall of Fame questions if you want. It used to be we voted. This is just a modern era candidates. This is separate from seniors, coaches, contributors. It used to be we voted on those 15 guys. We heard everybody's case. We voted 15, narrowed it to 10, discussed some more, narrowed the 10 to 5. And then of those 5, we voted yes or no, thumbs up or thumbs down on the 5. And everybody had to get 80% of the vote in order to get enshrined into the Hall of Fame. Now they've changed it. So we will or have voted for a reduction from 15 to 10, and then a reduction from 10 to 7. And that reduction from 7, we then all vote for 5. But in that vote for 5, it's not a guarantee that 5 get in. In that vote from 7 to 5, only guys who get 80% of the vote get in. Odds are much higher that of the modern era people, 3 or 4 get in instead of 5, because there's no consensus necessarily built about which 5 of those 7 are the 5. And so that's how it'll work this year. We will not, I don't believe, know who the 5 are. Well, there is no 5. We will not know from that vote from 7 down. We won't know who those people are until you know who those people are, until they're standing or introduced onto the stage at NFL Honors the Thursday before the Super Bowl. So there's some inside baseball on the Hall of Fame. Dwayne wants us to leave out the guard or the kicker. Nobody loves them. Adam Vinatieri is in the 100 greatest players of all time NFL list. Like we talk about all decade teams and all. He's in the all-time NFL team. First guy we've discussed that's on that team in the 10 years that I've been there. How is it determined, Ed wants to know, who represents a Hall of Fame candidate? For example, would it be me for Henry or the Baltimore guy? The Hall of Fame committee determines it, but it is usually the representative. It would be me for Henry. It's the representative who covered him the longest and who is from the city of the team that the guy is identified with. Titans suck. This guy just saying. I agree, dude. You're not offending me. I'm not a Titans fan. Logan asked, would I advocate for first ballot having their own selection so they don't impact other guys? Well, I mean, no. That would increase the number. Like first ballot guys having their own selection so it doesn't impact other guys. It can't not impact the other guys because then you would be adding numbers. Well, Dwayne doesn't like this rule. He says at least 5 should get in each year. If less than 5, it will just create a greater backlog. I'm of the belief that this change was made to appease noisy Hall of Famers, chiefly your guy, Deion Sanders, who think that too many people get in. I look at that list of 15, and I don't see anybody that doesn't have a very, very strong case for getting in. So too many people getting in, I don't think it is a problem. There aren't many people getting in. They're not. I haven't looked at anybody that's gotten in during my 9 years. Now it will be 10 years, and thought they shouldn't be in. One guy, Morton Anderson, I'm not wild about. How would it impact numbers? Well, you're saying shouldn't the first ballot guys somehow be separate? Well, if the first ballot guy is somehow separate, doesn't that create room for other guys? I'm saying Eric Allen could conceivably get pushed for first ballot guys. So if we voted for first ballot guys somehow separately, unless we increase the numbers that were available for the class, I don't know how it would change anything. If we vote for them together or separately, still giving us the same number of slots to elect guys into. Really what it amounts to is self-control for the committee not to over anxiously put in first ballot guys. And I think there were 20 first ballot guys last decade and 17 first ballot guys this decade. If Eric Allen is going to get pushed off the back of the list, there are definitely too many guys getting in. Dwayne says, I don't think that's what's happening. I think the timing is off, right? Gutenkest just said Sullivan will be missed. Is this a report somewhere? Yeah, well, Logan, if you're saying first ballot is one bucket and non or another bucket, so you could theoretically have 3 first ballot and 5 non-first ballot. That's 8 guys. And they don't want a class of 8 guys. They apparently don't want a class of 5 guys. I think Peter King would have been welcomed to stay, but he did not. But he did continue to serve on a committee. It's not the seniors committee because I'm an alternate on the seniors committee now, and he was not in our meeting. So I think he's on the coach committee, maybe the contributors. Guys who representatives who represent who present the same player have to give a pitch for that player year after year. They're foolish if they give the same pitch year after year instead of revising it and coming at it different ways. It's interesting. You guys have had a nice debate over Frank Gore, which is not what I wanted to set off by any means. It's been good. We've gone 10 minutes longer than usual to have the Hall of Fame conversation, which I like to talk about. I'd like for people to know how it worked. I wasn't big on Morton Anderson. Morton Anderson got in because he's leading all-time scorer. I don't know if he still is, but he was. But, I mean, kickers are a different thing. Vinatieri, to me, is a different thing. He had a lot of signature kicks that Anderson did not. Listen, set up an account at Zen Sports for me. Go make a bet there using TN Paul. Get a free membership to paulkuharsky.com if you don't have one. $81 value right there alone. Eat at Edley's. This one is fantastic in Berry Farms, my home base. They're all over Middle Tennessee. You can't get better barbecue. It's really just delicious. Eat here once, you want to come. Once a week, you want to come. Twice a week, you want to come. 3 times a week, on and on and on. Sign up for paulkuharsky.com. You get the best insight on this team you'll get anywhere. I say that proudly. And I think people in here who are familiar with me will back it up. It's been fun to talk with all of you. Don't block the box, and be sure, please, to lock your locks.